say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Good evening, and welcome to the 2024 Free and Equal Elections Presidential Debate Series live from Chelsea Television Studios. We're excited to kick off with our series with tonight's Democratic presidential debate. Thanks, Marie Tati, for that beautiful rendition of the national anthem. We at Free and Equal Elections Foundation are a nonprofit organization dedicated to equally amplifying voices and giving a platform to those who have an idea, a drive to serve our great nation. Our debates have a history of celebrating the diversity in thought and opinion that is crucial for a healthy electoral system. I am proud to moderate tonight's debate with CNN MSNBC political commentator Kwame Jackson.
Thank you, Christina. Welcome to everyone viewing at home in corners far and wide. My name is Kwame Jackson, and I'm a lifelong politico, mostly because my Nigerian immigrant stepfather said to me we only could watch 2 shows at home as a grade school student. One was World News Tonight on ABC with Peter Jennings. The other was Sunday night television, CBS 60 Minutes. So you can imagine, as a grade schooler, I was very well informed and a little bit combative in class. Second, I'm a political commentator. I've worked with CNN, MSNBC, Fox, Newsweek as a contributor, and other institutions. And then third, I'm a campaign operative. I've worked with Barack Obama on his U.S. Senate campaign when he was just a state senator. I've worked with Michelle Obama's voter registration campaign on When We All Vote and her Let's Move campaign. And even on the local level with Mayor of New York City, Michael Bloomberg, formerly my hometown, on his black voter outreach. And so because of all that, I'm here really tonight because I am someone who is a concerned citizen. I believe that democracy is not free. It is not going to be here forever if we don't fight for it. It is not something that comes as natural as air. And each of us have to do our part to become engaged, to vote, to become informed citizens, and make sure we have change. So I'm here to ask the tough questions on behalf of everyone who's viewing at home, to make sure we talk about gender, to make sure we talk about race, we talk about the economy, and we talk about global engagement. So thank you for having me, and let's get the party started.
Thank you. Tonight we'll be hearing from 4 candidates running for the Democratic presidential nomination: Stephen Lyons, Frankie Lozada, Gabriel Cornejo, and Jason Palmer. We recognize that political debates are becoming scarce, and pivotal presidential debates are increasingly being overshadowed or canceled by the absence of key participants. We stand against this trend. United States citizens need to hear from all the candidates running to represent them. We believe in the power of open dialogue and the importance of diverse viewpoints in shaping our country's future. The Free and Equal Elections Foundation is committed to this belief, recognizing that real debates is not only possible, but necessary for an informed public. In line with our commitment to enhancing the electoral process, we're excited to be at the forefront of technological debate innovation. Stay tuned after the debate as we launch our blockchain voting application powered by Nexus.io that will give you the opportunity to vote for the candidates you want to see at the next Free and Equal presidential debate, February 29th. We will proceed with the debate using the cumulative format established by the League of Women Voters. This format includes a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, followed by approximately 7 questions. Each question allows for a 2-minute response and a 1-minute rebuttal or expansion, with each candidate having 4 opportunities for rebuttal. The debate will conclude with a 2-minute closing statement. From each statement, the order of the candidates was determined by a random draw. As we proceed tonight, let's embrace this opportunity for a genuine change of ideas, fostering understanding and respect across different perspectives in the Democratic Party. I'd like to extend a special welcome to our viewers on Rumble and CrowdPack. Thank you for joining us and being part of this important conversation. As I mentioned, each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Let's get started tonight with Stephen Lyons.
Good evening. My name is Steve Lyons from Montgomery County, Maryland, Damascus. My trade is a plumber. I've been doing it for over 48 years. 35,000 customers. You see everything. You hear everything. I remember as a young boy out down in D.C. when the riots were going on. D.C. was being burned. We're in treacherous waters right now. D.C. doesn't even touch the top of the iceberg. We got everybody mad at each other. We got the economy's bad. We got it's hard for me to explain. When I'm doing work, when I'm talking to people, you hear them. When I go in houses, you see people don't have no food. They live paycheck by paycheck, and that's not a way to do it. There's so much bad out here. We need to get somebody in the office that's good. So from the economy to fuel to education to protecting our borders, everything. So it's be my job, these gentlemen, we have read their websites. I'm kind of far from them a little bit on certain things, but I'm with them on other things. So tonight, I don't hold nothing back. Any questions, I'll answer for you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Frankie Lozada.
My fellow Americans, my name is Frankie Lozada, and I stand before you today as a proud representative of our vibrant tapestry that is our nation. In the political landscape, let me show you why diversity matters. Along the major party lines, I am only the 5th Latino to run for president, the 2nd on the Democratic line, and the 1st Puerto Rican. I am here to show the world that our voices matter and that we deserve to not only be in the room where it happens, but have a seat at the table. Our nation's strength lies in its people. And it's time to ensure that every citizen, especially our veterans, are protected, no veterans should face homelessness, solitude, or the threat of deportation. Together, we must stand and defend those who served and sacrificed for our freedom and finally give them the respect that they earned. I believe in reinvesting in the American people. Access to a guaranteed health care and affordable essential medications should not be a luxury but a fundamental right. It's time to prioritize the well-being of our citizens, putting their needs at the forefront of our national agenda. Term limits are essential to cleanse our political system of the influence of dirty money. In honor of Martin Luther King Jr., he once said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." It's time for our leaders of integrity who prioritize the needs of people over personal gain to step forward. Our planet is at a crossroads, and I am committed to leading the charge in addressing climate change. We must invest in sustainable and renewable resources to secure a healthy and prosperous future for generations to come. I proudly stand as a proponent of organized labor and recognize that their contributions are the pinnacle of our nation's success.
Thank you.
Done.
Thank you so much, Frankie.
Thank you, Frankie.
Gabriel Cornejo.
Everyone, I want to start by acknowledging there are 4 candidates not on the stage tonight. It's almost like we have a 2-tiered system. And frankly, we, the average Americans, we're sick of it. If these people want to be the leaders of the party of inclusion and the party that protects democracy, they should be up here, leading by example. Well, I'm up here. Hi, I'm Gabriel Cornejo. I'm running for president to be the voice of the American people, because you deserve to be heard. And I'm like you, the average American. I don't have millions of dollars. I have the hard work I put in, some help from some friends, so I could be here tonight fighting for you. Because I've walked a mile in your shoes. In fact, in 2011, I was in a near-fatal car accident. I was life-flighted to the hospital, suffering mental, financial, and emotional challenges that came with it. But you better guess that I walked away with the wisdom of knowing we're not promised tomorrow and the clarity about what to prioritize today. If you can imagine, it wasn't money, jewelries. For you, for me, it was the loved ones I have in my life. And I've lived in 11 cities and 2 countries, and everywhere I've lived, people care about the exact same thing: the well-being of their friends, their family, and their community. And I think we can agree that life in America is much harder than it has to be right now. But don't worry, I've got a plan. I've modernized vision of what America could be. One where we prioritize family and community, not the comforts of the wealthy, Because I want everybody to have fulfillment and experience life when you're doing more than just surviving from paycheck to paycheck.
Thank you.
Because we all
Gabriel.
deserve to be
Thank you.
thriving.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Palmer.
Challenging times, and future generations will judge how we answer the call. America is entangled in too many foreign wars. Our borders are being overrun. Our earth is literally on fire, and our leadership is old and outdated and also not in the stage. We need new leadership focused on helping all Americans win in the 21st century. I'm Jason Palmer. I'm a Democrat, and I've been an entrepreneur, a turnaround leader, and a technology investor for the past 25 years. I started out as a waiter in upstate New York, and I worked my way up, eventually helping to grow more than 20 businesses that are worth more than $1 billion in market value. Americans want a new direction. I know how to get us there. I know firsthand how technology can deliver high-quality, 6-figure jobs. The reason I know this is because my companies helped millions of people get to those 6-figure jobs. It's time to replace the dysfunctional politicians in Washington with proven leaders who believe in freedom, solutions and the truth, and who share common sense values with Americans who want to rebuild the American dream. My campaign has 3 pillars. Putting our people first is number 1, to build a talent economy. Harnessing the power of technology to create what I call people first capitalism, and modernizing our government so that it works for the people, by the people. America is the world's innovation leader. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, sustainable energy, all invented here. In every sector of American life, we need to innovate and implement technology that benefits everyone, all of you. This is a movement, and we need your help. Whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican, it's time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans. We need to upgrade America.
Thank you, Jason.
And we can do it together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks to all of the candidates very much. To our first question with Stephen Lyons on economy. Inflation and interest rates have spiked, and the average American feels they are worse off economically than they were 4 years ago. How do you plan to improve the economy for Americans, and what are your economic priorities?
First of all, we need to make sure we drive down the food prices and the gas prices. We must go ahead and allow land to be drilled and gas be cracked down through there so we can be U.S. first and not depend on anybody else. We had to be the front runner, all that. Also, like I said, the food price had to come back down. We can do that. And the way you can do that is basically, I think we can barter about that, where you can, basically get the hay. We have land, so you get the hay, which feeds the horse, cows. You can take that, and you get feed for the pigs and for the chickens. Everything is barter around, use around, go around like that, and then we got to drive, like I said, the pricing down for the gas. That's a must, and that can be taken care of too. But the main thing, like I said, is make sure we got food on the table for the kids. They're fed, they're clothed, and there's plenty of other ways that you can drive the economy down. It's just going to take a while to do it. I think our president did a bad job what he did when he went in office. I think he just basically went too far left, and boom, everything's just dropped like a rock. But it can be taken care of very easily. I got plans myself. How to help the budget, the economy, and basically drive things down and pricing and everything.
Thank you. Mr. Lozada?
We have to shift our priorities. The question, I believe, was directed from the perspective of the American people, which right now, if the data is correct, shows that right now the average American is in the most debt they've ever been in their life. How do they come out of that? The wages haven't gone up. There's no federal cap on credit card interest rates, which are predatory, and basically people are living off of their debts. Any business knows that the gist of their economy, or the gist of their success, is to produce more than they're spending. And we're not doing that. Our jobs are overseas. The money is going over there. It's going into the pockets of a select few, and we need to find more ways to unionize the labor, bring the money back here, and raise those wages. Offer those services that Americans do not have to worry about working 2-3 jobs just to survive. And some of them are sleeping in their vehicles. How dare you work full time? That's not the American dream that we were promised. We need to shift all that. We have to stop our priorities of focusing on importing, and focus more on what we can export and how we can shift our sales that way.
Thank you. Mr. Cornejo?
Yeah, let's start with diagnosing the problem. We have this giant wealth disparity that exists in America, okay? And you saw that exacerbated through the pandemic. It only grew further, and what has happened is people are feeling the pinch at every turn of the economy. So it's important that we address the monopolies that have allowed for this wealth disparity to continue to grow, while also addressing the needs of everybody as immediately as possible. And that comes in the form of something that Andrew Yang was a proponent of, called the freedom dividend. And for those that aren't really aware of this, basically the idea is like the $200 you collect when you pass go on the Monopoly board. Only in this example, we're giving you $1,000 a month, every month, as long as you're an adult and you're an American. And what that does for you, the average American, in your life, gives you the power to decide what it is that you want to address, whether it is debt, whether it is food, whether it's vacation, whatever is of need for you to address it most immediately. This program will help you get your head above water so that way you can start to focus on what it is that you want to find in fulfillment in this life and how to turn things into a thriving economy, because we will increase productivity as a result of the influx of giving funds to consumers, which yields more production for businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer.
The question was about what we could do to help people in a world of inflation, which we've been in the last few years. And there was quite a bit that the Biden administration could have done, but didn't do. One of the biggest causes of inflation is when money is made free, like it had been for many years by the Federal Reserve. Joe Biden reappointed the head of the Fed who actually let that free money continue, and that's why we had 9% inflation a couple years ago. He didn't have to reappoint the head of the Fed. He could have done things differently. The second thing is that we have $34 trillion in national debt. That is actually the second largest cause of inflation. As a Democrat, you might think it's a little bit strange that I'm talking about the national debt, but the national debt is crushing the American people, and we feel it in inflation. But I want to tell you a little bit more about that. 34 trillion is a big number, doesn't really mean that much to people, but it calculates out to more than $100,000 per American woman, man, and child that we have as debt. That is a huge amount of debt that the government has, in addition to the debt that's been mentioned that we all have on credit cards, student loans, et cetera. We are a nation awash in debt, and that's what's causing the inflation. So we need a president who stands up and says, we need to tighten our belts. We need to be more clear about our priorities. We can't keep spending on everything. We need to focus on what's important, and what's important is the American people.
Thank you. After each candidate finishes the questions, they have, throughout the entire debate, 4 rebuttals or expansions they can use at any time for any question after everybody's answered a question. So if you'd like to use one now, you may, or we'll proceed to the next. Use one of your 4, please.
I'm wondering where you're going to get the $1,000 from. I mean, the money. How you going to do it?
Yeah.
Right now, the government's spending everything we have. They're on a spending trillions, millions. Right now, I just don't see where you're going to get the $1,000 a month. We got seniors basically working past their ages now, and I got a big problem with that. I just don't see where you're going to get it from. We have to stop it. We have to put a budget up inside there, and we had to basically stay where the budget is. You know, I look at these congressmen and women. First thing they do, they hold up signs. I'm thinking in my mind, geez, that's $1,000 per sign. You know, I'm going through my mind saying this ain't right. You can spend that money on the poor, or you know, giving it to the Social Security. Social Security's said 10 more years. Who would think of that? The government caused that by putting their hands on the funds that never should started. Now, if you can explain to me how you're going to get the $1,000, I'm all for it. But way it is now, you're going to basically put chains on every American, middle class person, upper class, to basically make work harder to pay for it. So I just don't see it. We had to start budgeting the thing. We can't pull in $2 billion and spend $2 trillion and spend $5 trillion.
Thank you,
I'm a
Steve.
businessman.
Thank you,
I'm
Steve.
sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, well, if I can.
Would you like to use one of your 4
I would like to
rebuttals?
answer since he's asked the question. To give you clarity, the objective of giving people $1,000, it doesn't mean that we are giving them $1,000 and the benefits that they're getting, like food stamps, SNAP benefits, other monetary means that the government is providing. You as an American, you get to decide, do you want this service or do you want this $1,000 that doesn't come with any requirements? You're going to see that we're actually going to save money because we're going to have a lot of people that are going to make the decision in their interests. If they're motivated by getting the $1,000, guess what? We have relieved them of the limitations that come with other programs, such as if I earn too much by account, I'm going to make decisions about whether or not I'm going to lose certain benefits. right? We want to unchain them so that way they can make decisions to move in the direction that's going to be of value for the entire nation, including pursuing things that would be innovative and would also help us grow the economy. So yes, there is a cost that comes associated with it, but in turn, we also will see the GDP spike, and we'll also see pain and misery index go up.
I'd like to use a rebuttal on that, because I am a proponent. Martin Luther King was a proponent of UBI, Universal Basic Income. As you know, technology is changing. Things are shifting. We're losing jobs because of AI, robotics, and animations. Those are jobs that are no longer going to be available. And if you don't realize, our government comes from 50% of that revenue comes from personal income tax. If people aren't working, that money's not generating. So if you're a company that's benefiting from taking away those jobs, you should have to pay those taxes and pay higher taxes to fund that same universal basic income, because you are now taking away from the American labor force. That's where that money comes from, and Gabriel's right. If you substitute those for some of the benefits that people have taken advantage of now and made billions and billions of dollars off, while we're sitting there getting mad at the people who are getting pennies compared to the other abuse of powers, that's where we save. So it's going to work itself out, and when there's more money in people's pockets, they spend, and that drives the economy forward.
Well, that's true. I just, again, I'm for cutting the program.
Stephen?
Thank you, Stephen.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm actually going to take a rebuttal as well to say that I think the gentlemen here are actually kind of onto something, and and I don't believe in universal basic income because I do think it might prevent people from working. But one of the policies that we've come up with in our campaign is a dollar for dollar match up to your first $5,000 of income that would be made available for people who make less than $40,000 a year. This would help solve some of the inequity in our society, and it would actually help encourage more people to work. One of the big problems with the existing government programs, which have been around for decades, haven't been updated, and are very difficult to work with, is that many people don't know how to apply for food stamps, or they don't know how to get housing assistance, or they have to go through all kinds of crazy things to get access to Medicaid. My program would actually replace what's called the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, with this dollar for dollar match. And if people get that money in their paycheck right away, as opposed to waiting a whole year, that actually would encourage and stimulate the economy and reduce inequity.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now going to lean into a new topic, foreign policy. It's a very meaty topic, and we're all going to get a bite at this apple since we're in New York City, right? The Big Apple. So, to Mr. Stephen Lyons. After several decades of war in the Middle East, many in America believe we should stop intervening abroad and focus on solving our own problems instead of being the world's policeman. Others say isolationism is short-sighted and that localized conflicts can quickly escalate and turn into full-fledged wars if we don't intervene early. Where do you fall in that debate?
Well, the hardest thing is not going to war, but staying out of wars on that. I think, I forgot the first question. I'm sorry, the beginning question. Can you say that again?
Where do you fall in that debate in terms of interventionists versus isolationists? Should we intervene in wars early?
No. I think, I think we should stay out of wars right now. We cannot be everywhere. We cannot be the police of the world. We have to stay, you can't spread your armies 5, 6 different areas. And believe me, that's what our enemy is about, is spreading us, make us thin, use our ammunition. They're watching us. I think, if it's something to genocide, yes, we'll go in there and we'll take care of them. But we should stay out of the wars unless one of our partners that really gets in trouble, is being attacked, we can stop it. But if we go in it, we have to go in it to finish it, not to stay in it for 25 years. That's what we do. We hang in these things, and then, we spend billions and trillions of dollars, and our poor taxpayers comes off our back. So no, I think we should stay out of wars and basically, handle it. We can take all that money we spend over for what we're putting out right now. Again, we can use it for other things to help people, education, housing, hunger, everything like that. So no, I'm a protector, but I'd rather stay out of wars, and we can do that. But at the same time, if you're going to be the big dog, you better have a bark. If you're going to carry that man that carries a stick, you better use it. If you're a lion, you better learn how to sharpen your teeth and get ready to fight. Because if I ever went to war, I'll be the first one stepping on that ground, not leaving these boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen out there, saying the president's back there, you put me to war. So no, I think we should stay out of it unless it were really necessary. I think we should stop funding all the stuff over there a little bit. Like the Ukraine thing, we should fund it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking that first bite at the apple. We're going to give the second bite to our candidate, Frankie Lozada. It's now been roughly 2 years since Russia invaded Ukraine. How would you handle the ongoing war, and what is America's responsibility to Ukraine?
Well, first and foremost, our responsibility is to protect our Americans. So we should not be meddling into wars that could risk our soldiers' lives. Those are our family members, our children, our parents. Stop it. As far as Ukraine and Russia, you have to understand there are levels of opportunity. When we write blind checks, we don't know where that's going. And if I keep giving you money, guess what? You're going to keep asking for money. And if I just keep on going and going, you're going to keep going and asking. And that's what happens is I've been told my whole life as an American that we don't have that kind of money. But then again, we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars overseas when it only costs $20 billion is the cost to fix homelessness here. Now, I get it. We have allies. And for whatever reason, they didn't join NATO. They had every opportunity to join NATO, which would have made them a protected territory under our treaties. If that's not our war to fight, I'm sorry, but we cannot keep funding it.
Thank you. Let's move on to Gabriel. Let's take the third bite at the apple of foreign policy here. Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel happened more than 100 days ago. Since then, Democrats have struggled to find a unified stance on whether to support Israel. What should America really be focused on, and what should our position be?
Sure. So as Commander-in-Chief, I want to make sure that I'm transparent. Currently wearing an Air Force flag because the woman I love is currently deployed in the Middle East. So my priority comes from the vantage of not only being the protector of our country and our fellow brothers and sisters, but this is also intimate to me. My concern is that we, as big brothers to Israel, have a responsibility to step in and intervene to help protect them. But beyond the protection component, my concern is the well-being of our fellow countrymen. As far as things being escalated in that region of the world, I think that our mission is only to secure that Palestine is able to move forward and Israel in a safe and peaceful manner and end what conflict we have going on now, and that's it.
Thank you, Gabriel. Our fourth and final bite at the apple goes to candidate Jason Palmer. What do you believe America's biggest geopolitical threat is today, and what country or countries do we need to be most concerned about?
Wow. America has many geopolitical threats today, so I want to echo some of my fellow candidates that we cannot be the world's policemen. We need to prioritize our threats. At the current moment, China is probably our largest threat, and we need to prioritize there. However, what's really happening is the United States has been a sole superpower for many years, and now other powers are rising up, which is why it's difficult to address this question. China is currently the #1 threat, but Russia has invaded Ukraine, and I agree with the candidates here who said that we need to continue to support Ukraine, but not with a blank check. We need to be much more tight with exactly how much money we're going to provide and how long this is going to last. The problem we got into with Afghanistan was that it was a 20-year war. It was $1 trillion in treasure. There were so many soldiers that were lost. And then at the end, we just let the whole thing go. I was ashamed of what President Biden did when he pulled out of Afghanistan abruptly and left so many Afghanis behind who had helped us and made it so that those 20 years were in vain. So China is the #1 threat. And why is that? China is the #1 threat because of their expansionist desires. It is an authoritarian socialist regime that is trying to expand and continue to add additional territory. And it's also the second largest economic power in the world. And at the current rate, the United States will see China become the #1 economic power. That's why we have to be much smarter about prioritizing our economy at home so that we can stay #1. Since I have 10 more seconds, I'll add that My policy towards China is not just to pound our chest. We actually need to find a way to engage with China in co-opetition so that we keep them in check and don't end up in another Cold War. And I hope I have time to explain that more later.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Do we have any rebuttals, expansions? We're on to the next question. Next question, beginning with Frankie to answer. Censorship. Very big topic right now. During COVID, we saw a spike in the number of Americans questioning the establishment. Debates about vaccines, coronavirus origins, and Fauci's guidance dominated the internet. At the same time, conventional platforms like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook began censoring and even banning accounts they believed spread misinformation on these topics. Of course, since that time, we've come to learn many viewpoints that have been labeled conspiracy theories were in fact true. How do you see balancing freedom of speech and allowing people to express their viewpoints online while also keeping misinformation and fake news in check? Is it possible for those to coexist? And should social media companies continue to be the ones making those decisions?
Well, as we can see, present time, there is a lot of censorship of what's going on in the conflict in the Middle East. And I think picking sides is wrong. I believe we do have the right to the freedom of speech that we are promised. Misinformation is scary, it is, but at the same time, we become so divided as a nation that we don't know which platforms are true. Everybody's had those debates with especially in politics, whether you're Republican, Independent, Democrat, you're sitting there battling over fake, false headlines. It really comes down to the American people to really educate themselves and really seek that information. If you're not going to do that, we can't hold your hands and go through it. But at the end of the day, we have a right to be heard. Look at us, we're candidates you probably never even heard about. I campaigned in Illinois and they were so receptive and I was able to talk and meet these folks. And they're like, how come I haven't heard you? It's because of censorship. They don't want those voices to be heard. And that's the same thing that's happening in social media. And I'm sorry, but I get it. They're private entities for the most part, but you cannot choose sides, especially in certain points. I should be able to access platforms that I relate to and I can align with, and I can search and see which side I'd like to go by.
Thank you. Gabriel.
Yeah, to expand on that point, censorship is never the answer. Just like the free market, innovations, things come to light. The free market of ideas, it's the same thing. You're going to have a whole bunch of people producing a whole bunch of information out there. If you put censorship, ultimately, you may be censoring the wrong information. And what that does is it only further creates division in our nation. I know there's been a lot of frustration, especially around the pandemic, because many people felt like they were misled. But how can people be informed if the information is not presented? Whether it's presented in a way that the government wants it presented, or whether it's presented in the way that the people want presented, as long as the information exists in the market of free market of ideas, the cream will rise to the top. So censorship is not the answer.
Thank you. Jason.
In my opening statement, I talked about how some of my core values were freedom and the truth. So this question, rings very importantly to me. I do think that all Americans should have the right to free speech, both in the public square, on social media, wherever actually. It is our right. In fact, it's in the First Amendment. I believe not just in freedom of speech, but freedom of choice, freedom of religion, all the freedoms. And as Americans, we should put that freedom value number one. That is what is so core to the success of America and why so many people want to come to America to be free. But as a technology leader, there's kind of a second part to this question as well, and it doesn't get talked about enough. Social media, the way it works, is certain posts become amplified. So everybody should be allowed to say what they want on social media, but when there's amplification, when it gets algorithmed up, when it ends up on the top of your feed, that's actually the company doing that. And if the company is spreading misinformation, they actually need to be liable for spreading that misinformation. That's the thing that needs to be changed in our laws. It's a very precise thing to make companies responsible for amplifying misinformation. So we can actually have our cake and eat it too here. Everyone's free to say what they want, But when companies amplify misinformation, we need to have a liability regime that punishes that.
Thank you.
I can-
Steve?
Excuse me, I agree with the candidates over here. The people just want the truth during COVID. We had one side saying, wear a mask. The other side saying, no, we shouldn't wear masks. If you don't know the answer, then don't say it. You scared the, well, I was going to say hell, but you did scare the hell out of people. And lives were taken. Social media is a big part of this. Like the gentleman back over there said, social media is huge. They write stuff that's not true. And somebody else reads it and then adds stuff. And then you got outside influencers, like Russia, China, and everybody, putting their 2 cents inside there. So social media is a big part of this, and I believe everybody has a right to free speech, but you don't have the right to lie about it and push it. And then when you got one side saying one thing, then the people get mad, and then they start yelling at other people, and then all of a sudden you got riots. That's not right. It just has to, something has to be done where, like I said, there has to be a penalty on false statements. Because, these young kids, nothing but social media, that's the one thing they're on their phones every day. So, yes, everybody has the right to basically say what they want, but they don't have the right, if you don't know what you're saying, or you can't answer it, just say, I don't know, but I'm going to find out for you. That's the biggest problem I had. You had one side saying this, you got you had the big people saying, well, you had to wear masks. And all of a sudden you say, no. You hear signs saying, the other side saying, well, no, not really. It really doesn't do it. So that's what scares people. Just put the truth out. That's what people want, just the truth.
Thank you. Any expansions, rebuttals?
I get what he's saying, but at the same time, the biggest problem with the media is that we politicize everything. Mm-hmm. Not everything needed to be politicized. Like, people were legitimately dying during the pandemic. That wasn't something to politicize. We had to sit there and figure out ways. Did we know what was going on? No, we had to figure it out. But what we did was use tactics from previous epidemics and previous almost pandemics and other viruses that had outbreaks. We used that information to say, hey, these are informed decisions we should probably take. And when you politicize it and create that divide, now all of a sudden nobody wants to abide by those rules. And then the numbers get all crazy and our economy has downsides. And let me tell you, since we're on the topic of the pandemic, if they do have any full clarity that COVID was made in the lab, whatever our debt for China was, it's coming right off of that, whatever we spent during that pandemic. Absolutely.
Any more rebuttals, expansions?
Yeah, I just want to expand on the idea of the free market. Okay, if we were to put censorship on social media, okay, you're going to see a lot of people that are going down what they call silos these days. But what we find happening on these social media platforms is people are coming to conclusions that may not be in alignment with their ideals. And then because of the free market, because there's a desire to discover more information, because maybe I don't agree with it, up comes another social media platform. And what will happen is more and more companies will continue to iterate in response to how to best serve the interests of their customers. So censorship and the free market, I think, is the best solution to this, because like we say, disinfectant is the best, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So censorship is not.
Thank you. Frankie, Gabriel, you've used 2 of your 4 rebuttals. So you have 4 total for the entire debate. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to jump in on the pandemic. I think our country is still in shock from the pandemic, quite honestly. We had more than 1 million Americans that were lost, and there was a lot of polarization that grew during that time, whether it was about masking, whether it was about closing businesses, closing schools. I still feel like we don't have a shared truth about the pandemic, and I want to share a little bit about that truth the way I see it. That was the worst public health crisis of the last 100 years. And our government officials did the best they could to try to address it, and it was a moving target. And obviously it was not addressed perfectly because 1 million lives were lost, the economy was shut down, so many of you were thrown out of work. But we have to learn from that example. There will be additional pandemics in the future, unfortunately. That's the way it works. We know it's happened in the past, we know it'll happen again, and we need to learn from what happened, and we still don't have that shared truth. Under my administration, we would have a commission like the 9/11 Commission
Thank you, Jason.
that would develop that shared truth.
Thank you.
As I promised in my intro tonight, I'm here to ask the tough questions and talk about things that we often feel uncomfortable talking about. I want to talk about race, and I want to start that question with Gabriel. Race has been a stark reality and the unfortunate dividing line in America for centuries. It remains the elephant in the room. Given the recent societal backlash to progressive DEI efforts, national campaigns for revisionist U.S. history, and unchanging data disparities between Black, Hispanic, Indigenous, Asian, and white Americans in health and economic outcomes, what policy positions would you enact to tackle America's intractable problem of inclusion?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so if we're talking about in a society, there are private entities that we have put in protective classes around, right? That exists today. But when we talk about changing culture, the best that we can do as an administration, under my administration, is to set the tone and the expectation based on the experiences that I have, having lived in 11 cities in 2 countries, and understanding people come from many perspectives. We can look forward to a leadership style that comes from the vantage of knowing that we don't all have the same background, but has the ability to communicate with everybody because of that diverse background. The policies that you would implement, I don't know that there's something specifically that needs to be put into law because everything is going to come down to a case-by-case basis. There are such examples that exist in the case of Florida where they're banning books, right? And that is seemingly a censorship of an idea. And they're enforcing some version of history that may not be in alignment with somebody else. Again, more censorship. So as an entire administration, our goal is to make sure that we bring clarity that censorship is not on the table for us, and that will shine through with all the diverse backgrounds that will be a part of my administration and leading by example with that.
Thank you, Gabriel. Candidate Palmer.
So this is a question that I've wrestled with all my life. My background is that I've chosen to be a Quaker. That's my religion. It's a Christian religion. The Quakers were among the first people to call for the abolition of slavery. Quakers were also instrumental. They performed the first gay marriage in 1971. Quakers have always allowed women to be leaders of our meetings. And I have to admit, as a white man, I pushed back a lot on people that said, you have white privilege. And I said, I'm somebody who worked my way up from being a waiter. I don't have privilege. For a long time, honestly, I was one of those guys. I was not like Vivek Ramaswamy, but I was close enough, and I'm ashamed of it, honestly. It took me a while to really understand, from having more and more friends that were African American, Native Americans, people who may have been born in other countries around the world, that I do have white privilege, a lot of it actually. I grew up in a 2-parent family. My dad was an educator, and because of that, I cared a lot about education, and that allowed me to achieve things in education. And he actually taught me a lot, and I admire my dad for teaching me about this. One of the first things I remember learning from him was about apartheid in South Africa. And he had me read op-eds at the breakfast table about how the whole world was trying to change the policy in South Africa. And I learned about Nelson Mandela. And over time, I've come to realize that America is a great country. We are exceptional. But slavery is the original sin of America. And we should not write it out of our textbooks. In fact, we need to teach it and teach how we're trying to overcome it generation by generation. And I actually have a plan to try to have a series of conversations that help us get even further over this racial divide.
Thank you, Candidate Palmer. Stephen, can you address that, please?
When I was young, blacks and whites were that far from each other. We're like that. Are we ever going to get like that? Doubt it. You're always going to have racism, always division, culture's difference, everything like that. White privilege, I was just telling the guys, making a joke out of it inside the room. I was at 7-Eleven, and I had a woman yell, white privilege at me. I didn't think she was yelling at me, but she's yelling it. She's mad. Well, I said, well, being a plumber, working on a toilet, have feces up to my elbows, I'll give you all the white privilege you can handle. You like that? That's not white privilege. I mean, we have to be use our choice of words. Watch how we say things. But it's right. I mean, the culture difference, and I think, we can do better. I think, I think social media, again, is part of it. And coming up, I've seen us all get more closer and everything. So I really feel that things come out in the wash in the future. We just, we can talk about it, and do things together.
Thank you, Stephen. Frankie.
A lot of it comes down to education. Biases are always going to exist. Everybody's going to have those biases, but they're natural to us. It's whether you act upon it. The reason why I say education is because even as a Puerto Rican, the history that I learned in school ended at the Spanish-American War. And we talk about black folks and we only focus on slavery. We ignore the fact that they were inventors, they were scholars. We had so much more that was stolen from them that we just don't get discussed here in this country, and we focus on that simple point. Last year I ran for Congress. My sister actually came up with an incredible curriculum, which is called Bring in the Heroes, where basically it turned the education system to the children. And it allowed them to go home, talk to their parents, find a figure from their culture, and bring it, integrate it into the school system so they can get to know each other. Because that's what's happened, is we went from a country that was segregated, and that's where those biases were created, and now we're coming in. Now the benefit that we have is we have all of those systematic barriers that we have record of. And what we need to do is go back, look at all the laws that were made, look at all those barriers that were there, and fix them. Go back and say, hey, this is where we went wrong, this is where we need to correct it. Because what I hear the word tossed around a lot is equality. And what they need to do is talk about equity, because equality and equity are not the same thing. Just because I give somebody the same exact thing does not mean equal. If someone was 6 foot and I'm 5 foot, they gave me, each of us, a 1 foot box. He's still a foot taller than me. When you talk about equity, you sit there and you analyze all of the systematic barriers, seeing how we can correct, how we can adjust to see, okay, this is where we messed up, this is where that generational wealth gap happened. How can we have them have access to home ownership, better businesses and access to bank loans? Things like that are systematic barriers that don't get addressed, and it's much more than just the inclusion and race talk. It's also, too, granted, affirmative action was great in getting people to do it, but they were still hiring at the very bare minimum. You should be hiring the quality folks because you want to, well, not because you have to.
Thank you, Frankie.
Yeah.
Thank you. Would any candidate like to open it up to rebuttals or additional commentary? All right, on to the next question.
All right, next question. Thank you. Very important. Glad to have that race addressed at this debate. We're going to start with Jason here. Palmer.
Sure.
Artificial intelligence, AI. There are some preliminary reports that suggest as many as 60% of jobs in America could be impacted by AI, artificial intelligence. What is your approach to regulating around transformative technology like AI, crypto, and blockchain? Do you see the U.S. taking a leadership role? Should we encourage our own AI companies in order to compete globally, or try and lead the way when it comes to regulation and reigning in tech? Jason Palmer.
Thank you for that question. Artificial intelligence is going to be the largest change in our world that we've seen in our lifetime. And if you think back to before we all had iPhones or before we all had the internet, that's been a huge transformation too. Artificial intelligence will be even bigger over the next 10 years. So one of the first things that I would do, and this is so overdue in the United States of America, is establish a Department of Innovation and Technology. It's amazing that we don't have this department as a cabinet level department yet, and it needs to be established. The reason why is because as all these new technologies come up, and you mentioned crypto, blockchain, before I was mentioning biotechnology, if we don't have this Department of Innovation and Technology, then where are the regulations going to come from? We need this department and we need to fund it so that we can establish those regulations. Now, going a little bit further, artificial intelligence is at a stage right now where we do need to allow it to continue to germinate, but we need to quickly establish a regulatory regime. And let me tell you a little bit about that, because this is my area, technology. Back when atomic energy was first used in 1945 to drop the 2 atomic bombs, it took 12 years to establish the nuclear regulatory framework that has continued to protect us until this day. We do not have 12 years to come up with the right regulatory framework for AI. As AI is connected to more things in the real world, like cars, like cranes, like drones, we need that regulatory framework immediately, because those things in the real world can actually kill people in a way that words on a page or words on a device won't necessarily do. Unfortunately, I can't explain everything in 2 minutes, but hopefully that gives you a start.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Steve.
AI is the most dangerous thing in the world, I think, right now. People are going to use it for school and not do the work. You have to use your brain instead of letting the computer tell you how to do things. I'd rather hire a guy who does D work and C work than a guy who gets A's and using AI. AI is very dangerous. It should be regulated. Should we, stay? I say keep the AI out of our military, because it's very dangerous subject on there. So personally, I'm off. It's funny I say it's dangerous, but I'm for it, but slowly move into it. These guys who are making it up right now just want to push it through because it comes down to money. That's what it is. And you see on TV, you can be talking to somebody and all of a sudden your face goes on somewhere else, and then they say it sounds like you, it looks like you. And somebody will take offense to it. And that can start a war. It can start fights. So let's go slowly with AI. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Frankie.
As I mentioned earlier, universal basic income. AI is going to drive a lot of the workforce to be unemployed. Specifically, when you do incorporate them in vehicles, that's less liability. Everybody knows most car accidents happen because of human error. So all those insurance jobs, gone, which is why we need that supplemental assistance for those wages to be lost. Now, AI should be regulated because it is dangerous. It can be used, it can be manipulated. And the biggest thing of it is just there's no limitations. And if we don't have those restrictions now, like Jason said, if we don't start on it now, by the time we get to it, it might be too far down. And in a world like, for example, we talk about intellectual properties, even musicians, they were able to AI songs. You know, Bad Bunny, who's one of the largest artists in the world right now, they made an AI song that sounds exactly like him, which is crazy because they even matched the Puerto Rican accent, which is a very unique accent. And it got so many hits on social media. And when he was getting contacted, he was like, what song? You know, it's remarkable the things that they can do. And this is just the starting stages of it. If we don't act now, then yeah, we're gonna lose a lot of that workforce.
Much. Thank you for your thoughts. Gabriel.
Starting to sound better with the freedom dividend, right, fellas? Okay.
Yo.
Well, besides the unemployment case, the reason why we need to have regulation around and also be the leader in artificial intelligence, looking through the vantage of being the commander-in-chief, is national security. Because if we are the ones that are leading the charge on artificial intelligence, that means that our potential foes are going to take up that mantle if we don't. So it's of utmost importance that we are leading the charge, establishing regulations, but also we have to keep in mind that as artificial intelligence continues to advance, be cognizant of all the lives that are going to be affected in our nation and what our society is going to look like moving forward, because there's going to be a lot of disruption in a short period of time. So preparation for our nation doesn't just come in the form of armaments, it comes in the form of taking care of each other in anticipation of when that moment comes. We are prepared by having systems in place to secure people's ability to survive and thrive and find fulfillment in other ways, because that's what the advancement in technology is going to hopefully push us towards.
Thank you, gentlemen. And anybody, expansion, rebuttal?
I definitely want to expand on this because in my 2 minutes, I didn't get to the most important part about how you all can benefit from the AI revolution. In my opening statement, I talked about how we can upskill many more Americans and create a new collar economy. This is not a new idea. This is something that I've seen in action and my companies have helped do for millions of Americans. And here's basically how it works. You can now get, in 6 to 12 months of training and upskilling, lots of certifications. Think Google Analytics certification, Salesforce Administrator certification, Microsoft SQL Server certification. And if you get these certifications, then you can upskill yourself to $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 jobs. AI is going to enable many more of these jobs. And if you think you're not a technology person, this isn't for you, there actually are lots of other jobs that are technology enabled that you can qualify for too. I'll talk more about that later, but this is how we upskill all of America.
Thank you, Jason.
Let's move on to the environment, a topic I like to call the big enchilada, because this is everything in one bucket. So we're going to start this question with Stephen. So as we think about the environment, as climate change activists and everyday citizens grow increasingly alarmed at the dire state of our global environment, you will often hear them say, there is no planet B. At the same time, many American companies complain they are being held to emissions and clean energy standards that are hurting their ability to grow and hire employees, but they're competing with companies in nations like China and India that are held to different standards and emit significantly more emissions than America. How can you support U.S. business while addressing climate? What specific policies will you implement domestically to reduce carbon emissions, promote clean energy, and engage other nations to address the global impact of climate change?
Great question. Great question. Well, you're right. China basically has 1.4 billion people, and they're going to do things cheaper than we can, but we can do it better. Now, take climate change. Let's talk about that. I was at my house, real quick story. I was at the house I rent, and I saw bumblebees. And the bumblebees, they weren't going to the flowers, they were going to clovers in the ground and everything. And they were eating off that. Well, we use weed killers and everything like that to keep our yards nice, but I don't know for a fact, but I think it's helped killing the bees. Now, do I believe in climate change? Yes, because the butterflies are no longer there. The birds, when I lived in Stony Brook Park in Wheaton, they flocked overhead for days. They don't do that anymore. So we are losing. There is some kind of climate change going on here. And we had to, like I said, we had to hold China responsible. We had to hold India responsible. If they don't want to do it, we need to bring stuff back home and do it right here. We got the cars, everybody said about the electric cars. What's the problem with the electric cars? They're great. But we just had a problem the other day. 6 hours, people waiting in line. They ran out of juice and they had to tow them all away. So we had to really start working on the windmills. They're good, but the problem with the windmills and the solar panels are all made in China. So I believe we should, work towards the climate change, but go slowly, through there. And I definitely put, if I become president, have a lot of ideas on my mind. It's in my website. I don't articulate like these gentlemen do as quickly because my mind moves a mile a minute, but we have to do something. We have to leave something behind for these kids, our young groups. These kids right now, they have nothing. I wish I could show you what I had 1960s and 70s. It was beautiful. Now, it's not. So we need to do something.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Frankie, how would you tackle climate change in the environment?
We're not doing enough. I think, first off, I get it. American companies are complaining, but we need to lead by example. Since there's no global coalition that's actually going to participate, then if you're not in line, just like our child labor laws, if you're a country that does not align with those, we don't do business with you. And our American dollar and our business means a lot worldwide. What I want to focus on, too, is while great renewable energy is a great resource, we need to look into nuclear energy. It is the cleaner energy. I know it has a bad stigma because of misinformation, but we've come a long way. I believe France right now is powering about 20 to 25% of their entire country off nuclear energy. It's cleaner. You use less of it, less space. I've had the blessing of, in my business years, to travel this entire beautiful country. We have a lot of land that nobody's around. So if you're worried about any kind of pollution or any kind of radiation, we have the land for it. We can isolate there. One little plant can power Lord knows how much more than those windmills and any kind of hydro and any kind of solar. So if you're talking about there, because when you drive around, you're passing by those fields, you see hundreds. Imagine being able to replace all hundreds of those windmills with one little plant and be able to do just as, if not more. Because what's happening is our innovation and technology is increasing, but our fix is not catching up to it. So eventually we're going to have too much of a demand for what we can actually supply.
Thank you. Gabriel.
Yeah, it's very important that we have a diverse portfolio of energy being produced here in our country. We have lots of startup companies that are pursuing solutions around challenges that we're currently facing. We've relied on fossil fuels for a very long time. We subsidize those industries heavily throughout the entire history of America. The important thing is that as we move forward, that we continue to provide resources to the emerging energy sector, because it's important that we make this shift as quickly as possible. It's almost like the Paris Climate Agreement was an actual good idea to try to get the entire globe to come to a common understanding that, yes, the threat of one nation and them being such pollutants like China is going to affect the rest of us. And so in order to set the table and work with nations across the globe, we have to come to that agreement. Okay, yes, we are willing to all slow down our economies based on fossil fuels and make this shift together, because I understand the concern for these other nations is that there's going to be a competitive loss if they do so. But we, as the biggest brother in the room, we need to set that example, like Mr. Lozada had talked about. And so I think, and I believe, that we can do that, especially under a Cornejo administration.
Thank you, Gabriel. Jason, our environment.
When young people are asked what's their number one issue, climate change is always on the top. And that's because it's going to affect future generations much more than we can even imagine. But I want to give young people hope, because we actually do know how to address climate change. And part of it is engaging with the rest of the world. I was disappointed that President Biden didn't go to the recent climate summit. I, of course, would have been there at that recent climate summit. But the real thing we need to do, which is not emphasized enough, is we can innovate our way out of this problem. If I could recommend one book to you, it would be Saul Griffith's book called Electrify Everything. At this point, about 25% of our energy needs here in America are taken care of by electricity, whereas 75% is taken care of by fossil fuels. And what we need to do is electrify everything very rapidly. And we have the technologies to do this. I would support solar energy. I would support more electric cars. I would support electric everything. Buses, trains, cranes, everything needs to be electrified. Electrify all the industrial processes. These are not new technologies that have to be invented. They already exist, and we need to provide the right incentives to them so that these systems will quickly come up to speed and electrify everything. I want to give a shout out to Frankie speaking up for nuclear power. Nuclear power has come a long ways since 1979, and it's time for America to have more nuclear power plants as well in the states that want to have them. I would allow that to be a state-chosen issue, of course, and a locality-chosen issue. But we know how to solve this problem. We can electrify everything, and we can stop and even reverse climate change. And my administration would set us on that course.
Thank you, Jason. I love the unity here and the support for one another on ideas, and the respect that all these gentlemen up here have towards one another. Thank you for that. Any expansions, rebuttal on the topic of environment? So we're going to move on to our sixth question here. Voter reforms. Frankie, this one's for you starting off first. Voter reforms. Millions of Americans still believe the 2020 election was stolen. They want stricter laws that would require Americans to show their IDs and vote, that is, and to limit the number of mail-in ballots. That is in direct contradiction to what many on the left want. More voting registration and accessibility to polling places. How would you encourage and enable all legal Americans to vote while maintaining faith in the system?
Well, I love the fact that you guys offer a blockchain voting system, because blockchain, as we know, is one of the most secure networks, and the USPS actually had a framework for blockchain for that 2020 election. And guess what? Both parties said, no, we don't want to do that. And so when you have those voter suppressions and you have people who are fighting against practically secure methods, it raises those questions. You know, what I want to address too, which a lot of folks don't talk about because they don't see the correlation, is I'm big on our immigration policy. And immigration is the most successful form of voter suppression that we have here in America. Because we focus on the migrants coming in, we're not focusing about the people who've been here for 10, 20, 30 years, who have ITIN numbers, who are paying their taxes. Some paid more than our former president. And they can't have a voice in this country because they have no pathway to citizenship to vote. That's the reason why we don't clear out our tunnel of backed up logs, is because we don't want them to vote. We want to silence and suppress them. Same with voter IDs. Cool, you want to have voter IDs? Great, give them free. Allow people to have access to it. There's no alternatives that are being provided. If they just said, hey, we don't want no mail-in ballots, we want to remove certain polling locations, why? If you want a solution that secures it all, then provide those resources and provide a pathway for those people to vote and have their voices heard.
Thank you, Frankie. It sounds like when the Americans vote for candidates support these ideas, we're going to find these flaws of being old in the past and reform coming about. Please, go ahead, Gabriel.
Yeah, so in order to bring more confidence back to our voting process, there's not just technology that's a part of that. Honestly, if we want to have more inclusion, we need to have a defined day where everybody has the opportunity and have it be off, because it's so important that people take and partake in our democracy. I understand that some on the right are pushing for some other variation of either an ID or something that will be very specific to an individual. And I understand the necessity behind it because there's concern and mistrust. Let's say we were to implement that, okay? That is something that we can do as a nation. It's very simple to accomplish. We have plenty of IDs. If we were to implement that, the pushback from the left is that we have certain limitations on age groups, my grandfather included, but we have the means to make that possible. The idea is trying to get Americans to agree that we feel that we're safe and secure with our one right, which is the right to vote. And so we are going to re-solidify and reconfirm that confidence in our voting process by having a specific day for us to vote. And of course, the mail-in ballots still are going to exist because we do have our men and women that are serving, and we have many other use cases where people are not able to go on that day, but we want to make it as easy as possible. Same-day registration, as long as you have this ID, whether it is a state ID or we define other, we want to make it as easy as possible, hopefully instilling amongst the American people, not only do we value your vote, but we've done everything we can to make it as structured and secure. Excuse me, thank you.
And thank you for your ideas, Gabriel. Jason.
Yeah, I want to give a +1 to Gabriel's idea of having a day off, a national holiday for Election Day. This would be one great thing to allow more people to vote. Also, same-day voting is something that we should enable in America, and like Frankie said, with a government-sponsored ID, and we should make those IDs freely available so all Americans can have them. I'm also a big fan of what the Forward Party is trying to do around the country, and a number of other organizations too, to encourage ranked choice voting. Part of the reason that we're so polarized is that we're not allowed to vote for, this is who our first choice would be, this would be my second choice, my third choice. Ranked choice voting would enable that. Another reform that we should have everywhere in the country is what's called open primaries, so that people who are independents could vote in the Democratic primary, or they could vote in the Republican primary, or even people could switch parties altogether in those primaries. Make it open so that you can vote for whomever you want to see on the ballot. There are many great Americans who are working to try to make voting more accessible around the country. I was lucky enough to meet with Stacey Abrams a few months ago, and I think the work that she's done in Georgia has been incredible in electing 2 senators that are Democratic senators in Georgia, and I'm hopeful that Georgia will stay in the Democratic column in this upcoming election. It's super important, and what Stacey and her team is doing is incredible there. But I also want to use a couple seconds here to talk about January 6th. January 6th was a terrible day for America because the previous president led an insurrection on our democracy, and we cannot allow that to stand. We are the democratic beacon for the rest of the world, and Donald Trump must be prosecuted for his crimes.
Stephen.
Wow, I agree with all these gentlemen. But we do definitely need IDs. That's a must for me. Because not anybody can walk in and hand in the ID and vote. Because you have somebody yelling, oh, it's crooked. So ID, day off is a must. Give everybody a day off. Everybody gets a day off, so there's no excuses. Oh, I can't work because I have to work Saturdays. Everybody gets a day off. They get paid. The bosses paid them. That'd make it easier for them. There'd be no excuses then. And open primary, I agree with you, gentlemen, on that. So there's an argument on that. But we just have to, figure something out. And we can do that easily. Just seems like, like I said, for the seniors, I think there should be mail-ins for the seniors. You go around to each, old senior citizens like Leisure World, whatever. You go around there, you can collect the ballots. Somebody who's could be Republican or Republican and Democrat, both can be there watching, get the ballots, and put them in. That's it. Now, but everybody else who can walk, they should be able to walk and go to vote. So, but again, I agree with these gentlemen.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have any expansions, rebuttals?
I'd like to expand on that too. Like
Please,
the
Frank.
1 day is great. I understand the concept of it. Everybody gets a day off. I think everybody should have a day off. It's great. But our servicemen that are overseas, their vote counts too. We have to make sure that they have their votes too. I worked on a government contract where I spent almost 2 years away from my home in El Paso, Texas. I would have no other choice but to mail in my vote. So we have to keep in mind that not everybody is going to be in their home state or where they can near that election time. And we have very strict election periods that we have to cast our vote in certain times. And I think we have to be mindful of that. While it's great, yes, we can have everybody go in person, perfect. Those who can should, but we should be able to make sure that we have ways where everybody's voice is heard.
Thank you. Any more rebuttal expansion? And gentlemen, I want to thank you all. With voter reform, our criteria tonight being on the ballot, at least 4 states, what you have done to even achieve that, the time and the money and the resources, knowing there's many people running, thank you for that. And another one of many reforms that I foresee us happening in the future when we elect honest, accountable individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Frankie, thank you for teeing this next topic up, but this question goes to Gabriel. Let's talk about immigration. The ongoing border crisis has highlighted challenges in immigration policy. How do you propose addressing the immediate humanitarian concerns at the border while simultaneously working on comprehensive immigration reform to address the root causes and to ensure a fair and secure immigration system?
Sure. Yeah. My background and part of my experience in my life was I helped the American Red Cross establish a whole new division during the Hurricane Harvey relief effort. Okay, that experience allowed me to understand the level of despair that people who have lost everything can experience. And so first and foremost, for those that are coming into our country, it's imperative that we welcome them in and offer some place that they are secure and are able to establish themselves in a proper light to be able to explain their situation. Right? People are coming here for various reasons. So first and foremost, it's safety, security for them. For us as Americans, it's important that we understand that, yes, we want to make sure that we have safe, secure borders. But we also have to understand why people are fleeing the nations that they're coming here from. And I think it's imperative that we invest in those communities, partnering with those nations to help build them up. This is similar to what we call the Marshall Plan that took place after World War II, offering our services as a nation to partner with these countries to help them develop so people from those nations are able to stay in those nations and hopefully build that relationship, build their own communities, and build this expanding idea of democracy while simultaneously addressing the amount of people that are coming into this nation. We need to have an army of judges that are going to be helping mitigate the timing that it's taking presently for people to come into this country through the legal process. Because of the timing, people are circumventing the system, trying to come in through other means because of the level of despair. And thirdly, the last and most important part of this is people need the ability to seek sanctuary, seek asylum, in their home nation, because they're going to make it through Lord knows what to get here, to get to that process. Well, if we can alleviate that process by having them show up at their own nation, that should help us on all fronts.
Thank you. All right. Jason.
So immigration is the biggest reason why Donald Trump rose to power. We have not upgraded our nation's immigration system in 40 years, and it's a shame. It needs to be upgraded. And let's start with the border. Almost 3 million people have tried to cross the border over the past year, and the current administration has not solved it. Obviously, we need more border agents, but, and I have a 7-page paper that will be published in the next week on this topic, we also need to dramatically expand the number of border judges and change the way we adjudicate people's desire to come here for asylum. Right now, people are processed and then they're allowed to wander the country freely. And some people that I know, friends, it's taken 10 years for their asylum case to finally be finished. That's unacceptable. We need to have all asylum cases processed within 1 month. And that doesn't require more border agents. It requires a lot more judges and a lot more efficient system to process those people. Secondly, I want you all to know that even though I started with the border, because that's where the question started, I believe we should actually dramatically expand immigration and focus on building a talent-based immigration system here in America. We need to build an immigration system that's more like Canada or Australia, where you get points for the skills that you have, for your ability to speak English, whether you have other family members here. We can make it a much better immigration system if we designed it with talent in mind, hiring more doctors, hiring more nurses, hiring more computer science professionals. Immigrants make our country strong, but it has to be immigrants who qualify to be here in America.
Thank you, Jason. Stephen.
Lord, Jason, you must be read my website, son. I'd say the same thing. We need to shut the borders. Bottom line right now, shut them down temporarily. I know my friend here is shaking his head, but we had to shut down. 3 million, they're coming through here. And who's paying for it? The taxpayers. They go, they don't know. Once they're gone, we don't know where to go. They say they're going like, they might be going to Wisconsin. Next thing they're going D.C. They're going everywhere. We had to stop them. And like Jason said, is we had people waiting 20 years, not 20 years, like 12 years, 10 years, 5 years. They've been waiting to come in and do it right. Give them an opportunity first and do it on talent, like you said. That's the first thing. Bring in the people who we need, the doctors, even farmers, stuff like that. The immigrants come in and they can farm, they can build houses. We need skilled workers. But we just can't have everybody coming across the border. I mean, because once they get in here, they just, crime's going up. And, you look at New York right here, the mayor, it's out of control. Down in Texas. So I agree with them. We need people down there. If you want to let them through here quicker, have judges down there. But we need to give these border control help. That's even if you have to put a small army down there just to keep them out temporarily and throw back. President Biden's failed miserably on this. He should have said right away, no more, do not come. We can't now hold South America to come up in North America. We can't do it. We can't afford it. The taxpayers are breaking their backs already trying to, pay their foods, their taxes, everything. So it's the taxpayers that end up paying for this. Now, I like to see people, immigration made America. But at the same time, we had to do it right. Shut it down. Shut it down. And then, like you said, they can send in stuff over there. If their country had a problem, I'm sorry. Again, we can't police the world. We can't. We're just shiny armor up here, but you have to do it right. That's the only thing I'm saying. Allow them in, but allow the first ones in first who's been waiting.
Thank you, Stephen,
yes,
for your
sir.
thoughts on immigration.
I'm gonna entertain Mr. Lyons just for a second. Just so you know, a lot of the migrants that I had come in contact personally, they are licensed professionals. They're doctors. They can't use their license here because they came here undocumented. And so they end up doing the jobs that we don't want to do, which they are super overqualified for, and we were missing out on that talent, number one. Number two is I would clear the pipeline. Like I said, we have people here who have been here for 10, 20, 30 years who have been paying their taxes, who've been working and building up their communities and economies. Give them a pathway to citizenship. We have DACA recipients who have no recollection of any other country other than the United States. They are here, they're getting educated, they also paying taxes. They are building up our country. Give them a pathway to citizenship. Right there, that's millions of people out of that pipeline. Number two is we're getting out-hustled by the cartels. I don't like being hustled by anybody. Sorry. Our immigration problem is Mexico's immigration problem. And I spoke to the ambassador of Mexico, Montezuma Barragan, down in New Mexico. And we discussed moving our processing center down to the bottom of the Mexican border where Guatemala is, because our border is 2,000 miles. Their border is 500. That's 1/4 of our entire border. That makes sense. And there you remove that exploitation, you remove the rape, the trafficking, and all the exploitation, and then you could make them pay for that system, because aside from the media says, Mexicans aren't the ones coming over. They're mostly Central South Americans and any other countries that are kind of doing it, like I said, being out-hustled by the cartels. But if you make them pay for it, just like we do student loans, allow them to figure what each person's individual asylum case is going to cost. You give them a low interest, not a staggering one like the Dignity Act is. Forget the Dignity Act, it's terrible. But you give them a set, low-income fixed loan that will pay for it'll create those jobs, pay for the prosecutors, pay for those judges that Jason wants, and it'll give them a pathway to citizenship, and they can't get that citizenship until that loan is paid off. And that's after we've already vetted them and found out that, hey, their asylum case is real.
Thank you, Frankie, for that amazing passion for inclusion and opening up the immigration table. Gentlemen, are there rebuttals or expansions on that?
I agree with him, with Frankie, about, letting the guys been here 15, 20 years, or whatever he said, give them citizenship. As long as they've been in no trouble, I have no problem with that. The problem I have is when you say illegal, a lot of people say they're immigrants, they're not illegal. Once you cross that line, not, be allowed in, you come in, that's illegal. But they must be checked. You got China, you got all these other countries send their best word I could use it, they're trash over here. And then you hear about muggings. They're sitting around. They need to work. They can't be sitting in there. Can't have to work. I agree with you. I'm not arguing that. But the problem is the Congress and everybody doesn't want them. They say, well, it's going to take a long time. It might take 2 years. So what do? Our taxpayers pay for it. Well, let them stay out till they get a number come in. Something has to be done. I agree with this. It has to be redone. But it has to make sense. Put judges down there, roaming like that. But there's so much problems coming in that, you have 3 million, whatever comes through, they should be come through here. They should go what the U.S. has started.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yes, sir.
Any additional rebuttals? Jason?
Yeah, I'm going to use an expansion on this because I want to compliment some of the things that Frankie said. And he spent 2 years at the border, and I think it's really important that we listen to people who actually were in the field at the site, solving these problems directly. So another thing that's worth mentioning is that in the first month of my administration, I would work with Congress to pass a law so that all of our DACA individuals here, those are the dreamers, would have a clear path to citizenship. This is overdue. 75% of the American people support it. Many of these people have been here 15, 20 years, know no other country than the United States. We are overdue in giving the dreamers a path to citizenship. The other thing I want to mention is that the reason that this comprehensive immigration law hasn't passed in the last 40 years is that politicians always try to pass it as one giant omnibus that tries to do everything. I would break it up into pieces: the dreamers, the border, guest worker program, and then building the talent economy. We have to break it into pieces to get this job done.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Well, we are moving on. Good for rebuttals, expansions? Okay, we're moving on to our final question for the evening.
Awesome.
Education. Jason, you'll be answering this question first. Education, the state of public education in the U.S. is grappling with critical challenges. Our K-12 students are not only falling behind their international peers in key areas like math, science, and reading, but also facing disparities in resources and opportunities. Moreover, college graduates are entering the workforce burdened with unprecedented levels of debt impacting their financial stability and career choices. Given these pressing issues, what specific strategies and policies do you propose to address and transform the current education crisis?
This one's going to be really hard for me to do in 2 minutes because I've been investing in education technology for the last 20 years of my life, and it is my passion to dramatically change U.S. education. I'll start with all of our systems, K-12, post-secondary, need to be upgraded to be more aligned with the real world, with the 21st century. So let me give you a couple quick examples. So one of the companies that my firm invested in provides ability for students to learn computer science and robotics, and it's an after-school program, STEM. And in fact, in these schools, those 3 hours of after-school learning 21st century skills are the best part of the student's day. Students want more and more exposure to things like computer science, AI, and robotics. And then when you go into college, we need to stop encouraging people to go for 4-year degrees. There are these shorter certification programs and 2-year degrees where you can get upskilled and get real-world skills that help you get to those new-collar jobs that I was talking about. And by the way, if you can get those upskilling that I was talking about in those certifications, it only costs about $10,000 in 6 to 12 months, as opposed to all these people who are racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt in traditional college. That is a huge change we need to make. Then there's another change that I would make, which I want to give credit to my good friend Jamie Marasotis of the Lumina Foundation. We are overdue in combining the Department of Education with the Department of Labor. I would combine those two organizations together into a Department of Talent, which would focus on upskilling all of America and transforming our whole education system, like I just described, to be more connected to the 21st century, more connected to the world of work. This is an area I'm extremely passionate about, and it will be fixed under my administration.
Thank you, Jason. Steve.
Well, since I got people that work in the school system, you hear my county says nobody's left behind. The problem is they push them through. They don't want to leave them behind, they just push them through. The kids can't even read or write, half of them. You need to take care of that first. And they always say, you hear the teachers, well, I got so many kids, they start trouble. Well, get the kids out of trouble, the ones who want to learn. JUCO, like you said, going to community college. I think it's excellent. I think we can help these kids with financing on that a little bit. With the kids. Now, going to regular college, I don't think we can help it. It costs taxpayers so much money. But I agree with you guys, with the ones I talked to so far, or heard so far. We need to make sure these kids are educated and taken care of. Now, if I was president, if they want a free education, I have it called military education, where we learn trades, diesels, cars, everything like that. You would learn how to be doctors and nurses. We send them, the ones we send to these schools like the Ivy Leagues. Well, we basically give them a lot of stuff there too. We'll make them take them in there. And they would work during the day or night and switch over. They would go to school and they would get a college education through the services, but they would have to work for it. So they'd be working a little harder, but they should get a free education out of it. I have a lot of more ideas on that, but that's one way. You heard somebody else before said that they would do it, but it's never been done. But it can be done. You send these kids to the Army, Navy, and Marines, whatever, Air Force, and they go to school part of the day. And we can do that for these kids, help the kids, or go to community college. There's nothing wrong with community college. Actually, I think sometimes it's better. It's less class, and you get to learn more.
Thank you, Steve. Just loving so many solutions that we're hearing tonight. Keep on with the solutions and ideas. Frankie.
I think it's important to distinguish that education comes down to a state responsibility. But on a federal scale, what I want to do is make sure that we have a base expectancy, which includes putting financial literacy into our schools so that kids understand the entrepreneurial mindset, they understand debt, they understand things that are going to be targeted at them once they graduate high school. I do also want to incorporate trades back into schools. We've already established that higher education may not be for everyone. Everybody has different learning abilities. So then incorporate trades, teach them how to do stuff with their hands. That on top of that is we need to invest in their education to the point where The problem we have is our founding fathers were able to go to these same universities with half the course load, because half of these courses didn't exist. They were graduating as doctors and attorneys and becoming legislators with 2 years under their belt. We have all of these courses that are those core courses, those filler courses that they don't even need it. And when kids graduate, they're ending up in fields that aren't even part of their degree. So we're not even working towards the labor force there. As far as student debt goes, it is predatory. We need to find a way to start forgiving in brackets, but allow them also to work back towards it, which we have programs now where they can work for the government, work for agencies that will do a loan buyback program. But it is healthy to find a way to form a fund to target that debt, because the more money within their pockets gets spent in our economy and boosted up. But education does need a complete overhaul. Instead of just building up on a broken foundation, we do need to break it down and work with the states to say, hey, this is why we need this. You know, another thing that I was trying to do was on the state level in New York was something I called SMART, which is Student Measured Attendance Rewards Tuition. And it was my target on attacking my communities that have high problems of absenteeism. So it incentivized kids to go to school, because with every education hour, just like when we work a 9 to 5, we get an hour for every time off for every hour that we work. Okay. Yeah.
Communities, real change begins from the ground up.
Always.
Thank you, Frankie. Gabriel.
All right, so the lens that I look at this through is as the average American, okay? And so we have a lot of early age students that are struggling to move and become more competent and passing their coursework. That's due to the fact that life has gotten harder for the vast majority of us. And that's the very reason why I'm such a proponent of the freedom dividend. Because if people don't have the ability to get their head above water, how can the parents be available for their kids when they need them? When those early ages, their parents are this reinforcement of the education that they're getting at the K through 12 grade level. Part of this problem also is that teachers have way too many students to be able to address the needs of their class sizes. So it's important that we are also contributing more focus towards providing more funds so that they too have the resources to address those students that are falling behind. But think about this from the context of everybody is just barely getting by. How can we fix and address these issues? That's why it's so important that not only is education something that we can structurally put in changes for, but the conditions in which we are involved in and have this ability to take education outside of the structure of schools is also important. When it comes to higher education, something that I've prided myself in doing is I've built a platform like Priceline for, it was for educational purposes at that time. Higher education has a lot of transparency issues. And if you don't know what you're getting into as a student and knowing what you're going to exit with, it's hard to be an informed consumer. Something that the government can build instantly, and this wouldn't require Congress to implement, is a way for all of the universities and trade schools to present their capacity and cost, so that way we can start to use the free market to bring down prices while we uncover and unearth solutions to try to drive down costs, because it's important that people have access to education, but it's also important that we make sure that the universities and trade schools are able to sustain themselves.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you. Yep.
Steve, Frankie, Gabriel, would you like to use any of your remaining rebuttals?
Is this the last question? I got a little
Yes,
rebuttal.
it is.
Then. I don't know if Frankie was saying that you should forgive student loans for these like that. Now, I don't believe in forgiving student loans. They went to school, they should have to pay for it. Now, they're outrageously high. They might get 60% interest. We can take care of that. You pay the loan, we'll put 0%, but we'll borrow you. You take, if you're a doctor, you go into it and help the people. You work at a in-and-out clinic, and we'll give you credit for that. There's ways to work around and help the people. But, you know, what are you teaching these kids when you tell them, oh, we'll forgive your loans? That's $650 billion. Again, I had to pay for my kids' education, and most parents do. And, you know, when you hear them say, well, we'll give you free education, we cringe. We had to pay for it. If they're going to get education, take education. Now, if they're, like I said, doctor or they plumber, whoever they are, you work it out. You go work for somebody, for the government or whatever, you go do some free jobs. Something like that.
Frankie.
I'd like to piggyback off that because I did also suggest working towards paying off that loan. I did. But one thing that you did mention that I did want to kind of cover was also the fact that what gets ignored are the people who paid back their loans. And I think that we should be able to set a certain standard because, true, if you go to a Ivy League university, you're going to pay top dollar. Sure. So everybody's student loan is going to be different, which means it goes back to our equity. Everybody should have a certain threshold that we are willing to forgive. And that goes retroactively to people who have paid back their loans. Maybe not all in one lump sum, but they should be broken down to that amount over the course of so many years where they can take that as a tax write-off or either get some kind of credit by the government. Something that benefits everyone, because if you do something for one, you should do something for all.
I agree.
Any more in the rebuttals? Gabriel, Stephen, all set?
Gentlemen, thank you for talking about education. We all were reminded of "Your mind is a terrible thing to waste," the old UNCF slogan. So we really appreciate that commentary tonight. There's some powerful statements that have been made. There have been some great visions tonight, but we'd like to offer the opportunity for all the candidates to do a 2-minute closing statement. And we're going to begin with Stephen.
Oh, Lord, again. Well, I don't want to talk at you, I want to talk to you. We're in treacherous waters right now. We are in treacherous waters. We got 2 presidents nobody's happy with right now. One running and one's in there. Something has to be done. We need hope. Hope that things will turn out right. People need hope out here. I mean, these gentlemen are educated and everything. I didn't have that experience. I had to end up going, leaving school and going to my father's business in New Zealand to feed the family. I would do it over again the same way. But we need something to give these people hope out here. And we need somebody in the office that's not afraid to make the decisions or, being too far right, too far left. Mainstream, just right down the middle. Most people are moderate, 80%. 80%. You got 15% on the left, 15% on the right. That's 30%. I'm sorry, 7.5 on the right, 7.5 on the left. That's 15%. Now, where's the other 5? That's, that error judge. But we do need somebody in the office that can willing to help the people. Now, me personally, if I was in there, I'd be working out of Camp David. You wouldn't see me. All of a sudden you hear, well, Lyons was up in New York. Lyons is down in Texas. I will go where my people need me. Where they need, something's being done wrong to them, I'll be there. I'm not in front of the guy that's like sitting outside putting up a nice suit. I'm a wear blue jeans and and shirts and everything like the old like plumbers do, like blue collars. But we need hope out here. That's what we need. I'm here. I'm your huckleberry. Now I may not be articulate like these guys are because I don't speak well in front of people, but I am a doer, and everybody knows that. Everybody in Montgomery County and DC knows who I am as a plumber. I'm honest, and I get my work done. So we need to get things, the Congress got together. I didn't agree with term for these guys. Now I'll get my terms. I'm sorry, y'all been done?
Yes, thank you, Stephen. You look plumber sharp tonight, by the way. So we
thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thanks, sir.
Frankie, please, with your closing statement.
I want to thank our moderators. I want to thank Free and Equal for allowing us to have a platform to be heard. And thank you to all at home for joining us tonight and engaging in this important dialogue about the future of our country. As we wrap up this debate, I'm reminded of the wise words of the legendary Roberto Clemente, who says, anytime you have an opportunity to make things better and you don't, then you are wasting your time on earth. Our country is at a crossroads, and the choice we make in the next few months will shape the destiny for generations to come. Voting is not merely a civic duty, it is a powerful act of shaping our collective future. Each ballot cast is a voice heard, a choice made, and a step towards a brighter tomorrow. I quoted Roberto Clemente earlier because he is a symbol of how strong an impact one person can have on a community. His legacy teaches us that we have all a role to play in building a society that values justice, equality, and opportunity. I urge each and every one of you to exercise your right to vote. It is the cornerstone of our democracy, the mechanism through which we can bring about the positive change we envision in our neighborhoods, schools, and families. My vision is not just about policies and promises. It's about building a community where everyone has a voice, where diversity is celebrated, and where opportunities are accessible to all. But to achieve this vision, we need your active participation. Your vote is the endorsement of a vision for a better future. As we approach the upcoming election, remember that your voice matters. Your choices count, and together we can create a community that reflects the values that we hold dear. Voting is not just a right, it is a responsibility, a privilege, and a powerful tool for positive change. Thank you for your time, your engagement, and your commitment to shaping the future. Together, let's make our country a beacon of progress, unity, and opportunity. I'm Frankie Lozada, and I'm running for president.
Thank you, Frankie. You just hit a smoking line drive right to Gabriel. Thank you for Clemente.
Yeah, I get
straight
to follow
Gabriel.
that. Thanks, Frank.
We'll see if you can field that one, my friend.
Yeah, well, thank you
right?
again for having us. And I want to stress how important it is that you have made it possible for the American voters to learn about their fellow candidates. Like I said early in my opening, there should have been 4 other candidates here on stage because as we are learning, there are plenty of ideas and plenty of people in this nation that want to better our nation. And I'm speaking again from the perspective of the average American. The reason why we have an old man and a crook leading the top of both tickets is because the system has failed the average American. I'm up here today wanting to be the voice of the average American because desperation is felt across this nation. And it's very important that we start to present a country that we all can be proud of, one where, because we are the only country in this world that is modernized, that doesn't have universal health care and doesn't have health care as a right, which affects us all, that's of utmost importance for my administration, along with addressing the wealth disparities that have run rampant in this nation. We've got monopolies that are getting stronger and stronger day in and day out. And that translates to people and fear that the future that they once took pride in the American dream, which is now feeling farther and farther away, is something that we are going to shape this nation to be attainable again. That's why I'm such a proponent of the freedom dividend, because that's the quickest way for us to get people's heads above water. Because remember, I said I was in a near fatal car accident and I experienced that I was not fulfilled with what I'm pursuing. But I want everybody to have the opportunity to do that. And these are the quickest ways that we can do that, by having somebody at the top of the ticket who doesn't take money, doesn't take bribes, because that's the result that we have with the experienced politicians in office today. So if you want to join us in renovating America, it's going to take us all working together. And that's how we're going to defeat Donald Trump, and that's how we're going to defeat the establishment.
Thank you, Gabriel, for your comments on the freedom dividend and bringing it home for America. So, Jason, you are batting cleanup tonight on the Clemente analogy. Bring it home and let us know your closing statement.
I love the analogies, and I really appreciate Free and Equal for hosting this debate. Let me put it to you straight. I'm here to ask for your vote. There's only one question that really matters. Do I trust this person to lead our country during these challenging times? As a proud father who cares deeply about young people who are in despair, this isn't just political for me. This is personal. I am here to fight for the future of all of America's future generations. We talked a lot about technology tonight, but let's be frank. Not you, Frank. The digital age is not just a theoretical concept. Nations around the world are moving at light speed to adopt new technologies, and the United States needs to keep being the leader in technology. Technology is shaping and shaking our country like nobody's business, except it actually is my business. I've been working in this business for the last 20 years, and I know how to make technology work for the American people. Before I close, I want to address the biggest elephant in the room, even though he's not in the room. Donald Trump is an existential threat to our democracy. But one 77-year-old convicted sexual offender who is facing 91 indictments cannot steal what we won't let him take. This man is older than my father, and I'm not going to sit by idly while he attempts to undo 250 years of American tradition. Trump is not going to bully me, and I'm not going to let him bully you. Enough. Who can you trust? Vote Jason Palmer.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. I want to thank the gentlemen, all of you tonight, for being here. More voices, more choices, our slogan here at Free and Equal Elections, and all voices truly deserve to be heard. So thank you for your time, Chelsea Television Studios. KWAME Jackson, thank you for co-moderating. What an honor. Yeah, what an honor.
I enjoyed it.
Very much so. What a night it's been. As we conclude tonight's debate, we at Free and Equal Elections would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to everyone involved. We're particularly proud to have provided a platform for Democratic candidates who felt their voices were being censored. Tonight's debate was a testament to our commitment to offering more choices and more voices in election discourse. We believe in inclusivity, recognizing that individuals across the political spectrum, despite having different viewpoints, often identify similar core issues. Our goal is to focus on the core issues that unite us as a foundation for productive conversations. It is through understanding and focusing on our commonalities that we can begin to effectively address the challenges we face. We believe that it's through these productive dialogues, acknowledging the diverse perspectives within our democratic system, that we can foster a more informed and engaged public. We are thrilled to officially announce the beta launch of our Free and Equal Elections blockchain assistant app, powered by Nexus.io. You have the power to decide who takes the stage at Free and Equal Elections' February 29th debate. 6 presidential candidates from various parties will be chosen by you through ranked choice voting, our blockchain voting app, funded that is by your donation and powered by Nexus.io, is your gateway to influence the debate. Go to freeandequal.org to cast the votes for the top 6 candidates that you want to see at the Free and Equal Elections presidential debate on February 29th. The poll is officially live and will remain open until midnight Eastern, February 1st. Good night, and thank you once for joining us. Thank you.